This video is designed to provide you some assistance in looking through the transferred intent material. I suggest that you initially read the Inree White case and the assigned notes. I assigned through note 3. Do that before you watch the video. Then watch the video, and when you feel comfortable with the material in the casebook and the video, answer the quiz on TWIM. You must complete all of this, including the quiz, before the start of class for which this is assigned. In class, I don't intend to re-lecture through the transferred intent material that you're seeing here, but I will answer any questions you have after the quiz. I will cover transferred intent on the final exam, but have chosen to teach you in this format because I find that the material is actually a little confusing, and it's very helpful to have the video to go back to and refer to when you're reviewing transferred intent. It's also a very discrete topic. All right, so in order to deal with transferred intent, we must first look at the Inree White case, and it's a pretty complicated case on multiple levels. The first is factually. So let's straighten out what happened here. Davis was washing cars outside his mother's home. He lives about a block away from White. That's his neighbor. White was engaged in an argument with Tipton, another individual. The altercation escalates. White draws a gun. Tipton races away on his motorcycle, and as Tipton's racing away, White shoots. Unfortunately, the shot strikes Davis in the abdomen. Now, White was criminally charged and found guilty of the shooting to Davis, but it's not what we're going to focus on for purposes of examining the tort at issue here. Davis sues White, and let's look first at now how this court that we're before in Inree White is the one that we're focusing on. So it's a little unusual. Davis actually sues White in a basic state court and a civil action for battery. White defaults, meaning he doesn't defend, and the court enters a judgment against White for the battery. So Davis doesn't really prove the battery against White, he just wins in a default judgment. So the court awards the default judgment of $50,000 for Davis against White. Now, when Davis goes to collect against White, White, of course, now is penniless, and so he files in the United States Bankruptcy Court for bankruptcy. Now, the bankruptcy court's going to discharge White's debts, including liabilities like the one we see here. Davis, however, petitions the bankruptcy court, and that's the case you're reading is his petition to the bankruptcy court. He's seeking to have the bankruptcy court declare White's debt, that $50,000 judgment he owes to Davis, as non-dischargeable. In other words, what he's asking the bankruptcy court to do is not discharge the obligation to Davis, that $50,000 default judgment, so that he won't have to stand in line with all the other creditors that White owes when White's debts are discharged in bankruptcy. Bankruptcy law declares that debts for willful and malicious injury by the debtor are not to be discharged. So the reason this is in your torts book is this issue, whether or not White's shooting is intentional. If it is intentional, it's non-dischargeable, and Davis won't have to stand in line in bankruptcy court proceedings to get any kind of recovery. He can still have the recovery of the $50,000 judgment not being discharged in bankruptcy. Right, so what we're going to do, and what the bankruptcy court is doing here, is trying to determine whether or not we have the intentional injury here. So it really is looking at whether or not we have a battery claim. Now realize Davis didn't have to prove this because White defaulted below, but we're basically looking at that battery claim as if he did. So as you know now, battery has three major elements: the act, intent to cause harmful or offensive contact, and thirdly, that harmful or offensive contact with the plaintiff actually results. Now, in this case, it would have been very easy for Davis to prove the first element. It's clear that White acted volitionally when he pulled the trigger. It's also very easy for him to prove the third element, that harmful or offensive contact with Davis resulted because he got shot in the abdomen. The real issue here is the intent question. Did White have intent to inflict harmful or offensive contact on Davis, Well, let's think about that for a moment. Was it White's purpose to cause harmful or offensive contact to Davis? Was it his desire? Well, that's no. Here, the only undisputed argument we basically have is that his desire, if to cause harmful contact, if anyone, it was with Tipton. Well, we learned about knowledge with substantial certainty, and you may be wondering, could Davis have proved that White knew with substantial certainty that the harmful contact with him would result? The answer here is no. He's shooting at a moving bike, and while I would suggest that's probably even a grave risk of harm to another individual to shoot in the direction of a moving bike when other people are standing there, it is not substantially certain to White when he pulls the trigger that he's going to hit someone standing near the biker. Remember, utter indifference is not enough to show intent in battery. We need to either have purpose or desire or knowledge with substantial certainty. So definitely negligent, maybe even reckless, but not at the level of intent. So the problem we're going to have here is that when Davis says, don't discharge the debt that White owes me for this battery claim, White is arguing, well, it's not intentional as to you. If anything, my intended contact was to Tipton. Now realize he's actually arguing in this case that he didn't even intend to strike Tipton at all. All right, so what we're going to do is work through a few permutations of the facts to show you the doctrine of transferred intent. So for this first one, I want you to assume that White meant to scare Davis. That was his desire. White means to scare Davis. All right, so if that's what's intended to happen here, let's look at the claim when he actually does in fact shoot Davis. How do we go about using transferred intent to succeed in recovering in battery? All right, so let's assume that Davis never actually even saw the gun, never apprehended that he was about to be shot, but he's actually shot. So he wants to recover for battery. He can prove that there was a volitional act. He can prove that he was harmfully contacted because he was actually shot. But our defendant here is saying, well, I really meant to scare you. I didn't ever mean or even have knowledge of substantial certainty when I'm shooting from so far away, or in the way in which I was aiming the gun. I had no intention to actually cause harmful or offensive contact. Well, the first type of transferred intent allows Davis over here to take a different type of intent and transfer it to his tort. All right, so he's not actually suing for assault here because let's presume he didn't even actually apprehend the shooting. But all he needs to do is transfer the intent element of that other tort. So here what he'd say is, I clearly have White intending to cause me apprehension of a harmful or offensive contact. So I'm going to transfer that element over to the tort I now know I have the other elements for, action and result, and complete the proof for my tort. So in this one, all he's really doing is proving the elements of battery 1 and 3 with the facts as they're presented, showing that while he doesn't have intention to cause harmful or offensive contact, he can transfer intent, only this element, from assault over to the battery. And this will allow him to prove battery. This is the first kind of transferred intent known as, in your casebook, transferred intent type 1. I don't want you to only know them by those labels because courts don't use them as transferred intent type 1 label, but just so that when you're looking through your notes, you can link them up to how your author's talking about them. What I do want you to understand is that we have the same victim here, but we're transferring the intent from one tort to another tort. So it's only a transfer from tort to tort. We transfer the assault that we can, intent that we can prove over to the battery claim, and then we actually recover on battery because we have all the elements of battery. All right, let's change the facts another time and now look at whether we can use transferred intent to help Davis succeed in his battery claim against White if all we could prove is that White intended to shoot Tipton. All right, so what we want to do is sort of visualize where the intent's coming from and how the transfer is coming. Now the intent is coming from the intent to do a battery on Tipton. All right. Now, we know that he doesn't actually shoot Tipton, but that doesn't matter because all we're transferring is the intent element. So we have the intent to cause harmful or offensive contact to Tipton, and we're allowing that to transfer over to the battery claim Davis is bringing against White. So now Davis can prove all three elements of his battery claim: act, intent, and result, because he's transferring the intent from the battery to another person. This is the transferred intent type 2 that your casebook author is calling it type 2. Basically what you're seeing again is we're taking the intent to cause this same tort to another person over to our new victim. So this is just a transfer from person to person. Same battery, same tort, person to person. So the transfer of intent only goes across victims. Our final type of transferred intent, we can imagine if what we could prove is that White intended just to scare Tipton. Now, this is actually what White argues in this case. So again, we know we don't have the requisite intent to cause battery to Davis. So what we want to do is visualize the actual intent we have, see where it's coming from, and then we can identify the type of transfer. So what we're visualizing here is an assault claim, because that's what our intent actually is. We don't even care, oops, here, where did my, there we go. We don't even care whether or not the actual tort is fully accomplished, because all we're trying to do is transfer the requisite intent. This time what we're doing is transferring the intent from an assault of one person to a battery of another person. So this is the most complicated transfer of intent. It goes across torts, from assault to battery, and across victims, from Tipton to Davis. All right, so that's transferred intent. You might want to review portions of this video. As soon as you feel comfortable with transferred intent, go ahead and take the quiz. You need to complete it. You may work with others if you'd like, but you need to complete it on your own. What I don't want you to do is have a partner take the quiz, tell you the answers, and then go ahead and input those answers yourself. You need to do this independently, at least to the extent that you actually attempt to take the quiz, but you may work with others in coming to your answers. So please do that before the start of class, and if you have any questions about this assignment or video, don't hesitate to ask me.